Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and likes, comments, and subscriptions for the suede jacket. It has returned. In all seriousness, welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking. Thank you, phone. Um, um, yeah, so I wanted to talk about this article and another article that I found on 538, where they talk about the changing electoral map in which states are becoming swing states and which ones are becoming less so of swing states. And they mention a lot of things that I didn't talk about when I was talking about, Minnesota politics. They didn't really talk about why the Democrats are all of a sudden losing a lot of touch with the non-college educated white voters in Minnesota, which make up a majority of the electorate in Minnesota. And part of that is because at the end of the day, I didn't think it was. It's not that I didn't think it was pertinent. It's just that I felt that that angle would probably be analyzed to death. But it is an extremely important one, and they did a very good job of explaining that. And talking about how the electoral map is changing, well, let's see if what I've been saying for the past couple of years the last couple of years, probably even since 2016, is true. Well, this is relative to the nation as a whole. As you can see, actually, Iowa trended slightly towards the Dems throughout the early one and then swung massively back. Logic would probably dictate that it would start swinging back, but who knows, especially considering the states, the statewide offices. Ohio, again, it kind of bounced a little bit, if we're 100% honest here. Bounced a little bit and then swung massively to the right. Maine stayed relatively similar after 2000 and then swung massively to the right. And there's a lot that we don't really know. In Michigan, a similar story to Iowa and Ohio. And then slightly to the right, Minnesota has actually had a legitimate trend towards the Republicans. Pennsylvania, actually a similar thing where it had an actual trend towards the Republicans. Nevada, weirdly, it's come back a little bit. But I think it's actually trending towards the Democrats. But, New Hampshire is basically a perennial swing state, but looking at a 1 year trend, obviously it switched. Or more accurately, it became slightly more Republican leaning. Wisconsin, it had kind of been staying in the same place and then went back, but was kind of an even state. But it looks like they're measuring based off of 2012, not over the past couple of elections. States that have been swinging blue, Arizona, 2008 can be mostly explained by John McCain, or else it would probably be about a little bit less. And then, well, as you can see, there's been a slight Democrat favorable trend in Arizona. Georgia, that has actually been shifting. Most of the shift happened in 2016, though. So it probably should revert to mean or stay vaguely in the same area. Texas swung massively towards the Democrats. Otherwise, it probably would have been in the high teens range, judging based off of the trend that you see here between 2000 and 2012. And of course, if we look at the former red states, Colorado is a good example, but it seems to have kind of stagnated, and its trend is only slightly moving, whereas Virginia keeps trending ever more towards the Democrats, and part of that is the increasingly outsized role that Northern Virginia has, especially with a lot of non-native Virginians living up there, basically Maryland, New York, D.C. people who moved to Northern Virginia and then just kept voting the way they did up there. And outside of Nova, Richmond, and Norfolk, Hampton Roads, a lot of people in the rest of Virginia aren't thrilled about that. But that's what I've noticed on the ground. And then, of course, some states really are just perennial swing states, though Florida is trending towards the Republicans, and I've noticed that ever so slightly. North Carolina is trending towards the Democrats, which I've been saying for a little bit now. But oddly, again, their trend seems to have stagnated, which, is that true? We don't know. And of course, they've done a series on how Arizona became a swing state, and that's because of a lot of college-educated white voters. And Florida, which is just a perennial swing state, so I don't really see the reason for talking about that. Also, holy crap, these are just a few and when looking at this, I don't like the way that they set up the page for their model, but whatever. Looking at this, these I assume are just a few samples of some of the simulations that they've run with their model, and some of these are a bit outlandish, but I've noticed that Trump's wins are getting a little bit more likely. I think, what is this? Looks like it's 12, 16 plus another 6, 22 maps. So they're trying to get it to roughly what this would be. And I think some of these are actually the forecasts that could happen. These are, situations within their 80% confidence margin. And so this map right here, if you can tell, that's Connecticut that would be red in that simulation. That would be a blowout, yes. As well as New Jersey. But looking at it, there's some hilarious ones, including Minnesota going red, but not Wisconsin. Minnesota going red before Michigan, too, which is a little hilarious. This one is probably the most normal that I've seen of a Trump win. And then you look at some of the Biden wins, for example. This seems reasonable, but also look at that Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania voting red, even in a Biden win, which should be a scary thought for any Democrat. And then you can actually look at some of the ones that are up there. And like I said, some of these are a little outlandish and will almost never happen, but hey, it's fun to look at. And then but I've been noticing at the start of both conventions, Trump was sitting at 27% or 27 out of 100, and Biden was sitting at 73 of 100. And that swung to, I think this winds up being about a 11-point swing in favor of Trump. When I say 11 point, I mean 11% chance. And I've been trying to figure out this model. One of the other things they talk about is tipping points, which are extremely important. Basically, any state in this area should be considered a tipping point. And if we look here, Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Arizona, North Carolina, Ohio, Georgia, Colorado, Nevada, Virginia, and New Hampshire all have a good chance of being the tipping point. And of course you can click on any of these, but just to show you, an example of how this race is tightened and draw some comparisons between my model and forecast and what 538 has done is I think they do a lot better regarding blending of fundamentals and trends. But obviously they have Trump winning in North Carolina now, especially as polls have kind of narrowed that down. Let's go a little bit. Let's go back. And I want to see tipping point. And then I'll select a good example of a state. Let's choose Minnesota, for example. As you can see, after Biden's peak, all of a sudden, closer. It's closer. Another state that they had close to the tipping point. Let's do Florida. Again, getting closer. Arizona, I believe they still have going for Biden, but it's extremely close at this point. And I think they have it at 0.5%. That is basically a statistical tie. So let's go to a state that my model had going blue at one point that 538 never did. And that's Texas. And as you can see, it's getting further and further away from Biden. And if we go back to the national overview and look at the trend, so they were sitting at, here, talking about almost an 8 in 10 shot for Biden to win at the end of June, which I think is not unreasonable considering where polls were as well as where I had things. And then we go, and it got narrower and narrower, and now it's getting extremely close. And to show that and compare that to my model, which currently still has Biden winning, this is a similar margin to what they have as Arizona. It's about 0.3%, whereas they have 0.5%. And then if we go to Texas, I have Trump winning. And actually my model is a little bit bullish on Biden still. Let's go to North Carolina, where my model finally is showing Trump winning in North Carolina. And then if we look at a few states, Wisconsin, that's close. It's getting really close, actually. If we go to Michigan and Minnesota, both of those are actually extremely close. Both of those are within 5. And Michigan is getting close to being within, well, it's already within 4. It's getting close to being within 3. Maine is also getting extremely close again. So I think there is reason to say, based off of all of this, that yes, indeed, Trump does seem to be doing better recently. And it does look like he's actually gotten a convention bounce. And it may be a lasting one compared to what Biden got, which Biden's 1-ish point bounce that most polls have shown. And when I say most polls, we've had really a dearth of polling recently since the start of the conventions. We haven't really gotten much information, but the ones that have been released that took place during or after at least the DNC has not shown a very good picture for Biden in regards to the DNC being an effective event, whereas the polls that we've had that have been released after the RNC have shown that the RNC really did help Donald Trump. The RNC was a very effective event. Now, I'm going to start looking ahead to 2024 a little bit here for the last, 20, 30 seconds of this video, and talking about what I'm probably going to change about my model going forward for that election. I'm going to focus on a turnout model, and I'm going to exclusively use the crosstabs the rather than the rather than top line results like I've been using. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm probably going to break down and go by race and education for white people. And the reason why is I believe this is actually the most effective means of properly looking at a poll. And not just that, but I think it's going to lead to slightly more accurate results. That said, it is going to be difficult because I'm going to have to make a decision to weigh by census results or by actual voter turnout, which is going to be a little bit difficult to do. So that's going to be something that I'm already working on because I want to make sure I do it correctly. But it's also going to be a much more expansive model than this one, which, don't get me wrong, I'm very proud of this one. And I may keep this one and just update it for 2024 and run a comparison between the two. I think that might actually be fun. Okay, maybe not fun, but it'll be valuable information. Anyway, I know this was a little bit rambly and I kind of bounced around between a few topics, but anyway, hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Take it easy. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.